It's just past 9 in the evening on the 13th of September, 1848, in the small town of Cavendish, Vermont. In a rented room above a tavern, a young man is propped up in bed. A doctor leans over him by candlelight, working quickly, quietly. The young man is awake, he is calm, and every so often he turns and asks the doctor when he might get back to the railroad. There is an open wound through the top of his skull, and he is making conversation. His name is Phineas Gage, and what happened to him on this day will become one of the most important accidents in the history of the human mind. So get comfortable, turn the lights down low, and let me tell you a story. This is the Night Shift Files. Before any of this, Phineas Gage was 25 years old, a foreman on the Rutland and Burlington Railroad. His employers called him the most efficient and capable man in their crew. Well-liked, a man who made a plan and saw it through. Remember that, it matters later. The work was dangerous and precise. To lay new track, his crew had to clear solid rock. And to clear rock, you used explosives. You bored a hole in the stone, poured in blasting powder, set a fuse, then packed it down gently with a long iron rod called a tamping iron. Gage's tamping iron was made to his own design, 3 feet 7, an inch and a quarter thick, 13.5 pounds, pointed at one end like a javelin. Accounts differ. Gage may have been distracted. Someone called out, and he turned his head. The powder had been poured, but the sand had not yet been added. And when the iron came down against bare rock, it struck a spark. The charge went off. The tamping iron entered under his left cheekbone, behind his eye, up through the front of his brain, and out the top of his skull. The rod flew dozens of feet and landed point down in the dirt. Gage was thrown onto his back. His limbs twitched, and then he sat up. Here the story stops being a tragedy and becomes something stranger. Gage did not die. Within minutes, he was speaking. He sat upright in an ox cart for the ride into town, awake and aware of everything around him. When the first doctor arrived, Gage looked up and said, "Doctor, here is business enough for you. I have spent a good number of nights in a trauma bay. By everything we understand, this man should not have been alive. And yet there he sat, bleeding, calm, asking about work." Soon, a careful young physician named Martyn Harlow took over his care. It is thanks to his records that we know any of this. The danger came not from the iron, but from infection, before antibiotics, before germs were understood. The wound festered. An abscess formed inside his skull. For days, he sank into a stupor. His family was told to expect the worst. A coffin, it is said, was made ready, but Harlow did not give up. He opened the abscess and drained it. And slowly, impossibly, Gage climbed back. By the new year, he walked Cavendish again. He had lost the sight in his left eye and carried a scar and a hollow at the top of his head. But he was alive. The hard part, everyone assumed, was over. It wasn't. The men who knew him began to say a strange thing. The man inside seemed different. The reliable foreman was gone. In his place, someone restless and profane who made plans and abandoned them. The balance between his intellect and his impulses, Harlow wrote, had been destroyed. The railroad would not give him his job back, and his friends, reaching for words, landed on a single haunting sentence. They said, "Gage was no longer Gage." It is the line the whole legend is built on. And here is the thing almost nobody tells you. It might not be true. We will get to that. Because what the legend says happened next, and what the records actually show, are two very different things. For a century, his story was told the same way. A good man, erased by an iron rod. The textbook proof that the front of the brain holds who we are. But historians went back to the records, and what they found was thinner and stranger than the legend. We have very little reliable detail about his personality after the accident. A few second-hand reports, a doctor's recollections written years later, repeated and sharpened with each retelling until a complicated man was flattened into a tidy cautionary tale. And then there is the part the legend leaves out. Phineas Gage went back to work. Not light work. He became a long-distance stagecoach driver in Chile, driving the mountain route between Valparaiso and Santiago. 6 horses, passengers, schedules, fares. In a language not his own. Think what that asks of a person. Planning, patience, routine, trust. All the things the legend says the iron destroyed. And he did it for years. Researchers call it his psychosocial recovery. The real possibility that his brain, given time, adapted. That he relearned how to be himself. The tidy story, man goes in, stranger comes out, may have gotten the beginning right and the ending completely wrong. His story does not end in triumph. His health failed. He returned to his mother and sister in San Francisco, and there, more than a decade later, he began to have seizures. On the 21st of May, 1860, nearly 12 years after the accident that should have killed him in an instant, Phineas Gage died during a seizure. He was 36. Years later, Harlow wrote to the family and asked for something extraordinary. He asked for the skull. They agreed. They opened the grave. Today, at the Warren Anatomical Museum at Harvard, you can stand before a glass case and see them side by side. The skull of Phineas Gage and the iron that passed through it. So what do we take from a man who survived the impossible twice? His case was among the first hints that the frontal lobes are bound up with personality, judgment, the quiet machinery of self-control. But maybe the deeper lesson isn't about the brain at all. It's about the stories we tell over the people who can no longer correct us. For 100 years, we needed Gage to be a warning, so we made him one. And we nearly forgot the part where a man with a hole in his head taught himself to drive a coach through the mountains of Chile. Gage was no longer Gage, his friends said. But the truth is gentler and far more human. He was changed. He was wounded. And he kept going anyway. Maybe he was more Gage than the story ever let him be. Thank you for spending part of your night here with me. If this one kept you company, there are more files waiting. But those are stories for another night. For now, sleep well, and I will see you on the next shift.